So let's talk about wildfire suppression. If we were to start a fire, how are we going to put that out? And we talked about the fire triangle. You have heat, fuel, and oxygen. Well, I need to take the heat or the oxygen away from that fuel source. This extinguisher we see right here, this dry chemical extinguisher, what that's doing with that dry chemical is it's blocking out the oxygen and smothering it. So we might use a shovel and throw dirt on it. That's going to do both of those things. We might spray water on it. We might do anything, but how are we going to put out a fire? So let's talk about that. Incipient stage, this is just a fancy word for the beginning stages of a wildfire. This is where we want to fight a fire. Like that picture on the right, when a fire looks like that, we can still control that. With our equipment, with our training and experience, we can put a fire out. But if that fire gets away, we want to call the fire department as soon as possible. Speaking of which, so here's our 5-step suppression plan. How do we put out a fire? In reality, anytime we start a fire, we want to call the fire department as soon as possible. Let's get them on the scene as soon as possible. A lot of places we work are actually very rural, and that may be a volunteer fire department. Those aren't the guys that just slide down the pole and jump in their trucks and drive to a fire. Those guys can get to a fire very quickly. In a rural area, it might take them quite a bit longer. So as soon as possible, we want to call the fire department. If we've got a 2-person crew, we want to work together to put that fire out. We're not going to send one person off and leave one person to fight the fire by themselves. But if we've got a 3 or 4-person crew, we can leave a couple of people there on the job site while one person rushes off to call the fire department. We want to do that it's absolutely as soon as possible. The next thing we want to think about is extinguishing the flame. If I've got active flame, that means that fire can grow and that fire can run. What I'm going to try and do is use the fire extinguisher to knock that flame down and manage that. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to form a perimeter. I'm going to, once I knock that flame down, there's no longer active flame, that fire can't run, but there are still a lot of hot coals in there. So I'm going to take my Pulaski, I'm going to take my McLeod, and I'm going to put a perimeter all the way around that fire. I'm going to dig down to bare dirt and put a ring around that traps all that hot stuff inside that ring of dirt. Then I'm going to take my 5-gallon backpack sprayer or a water bottle or anywhere I can get water, and I'm going to pour it on that fire, and I'm going to mix that thing up. So I knocked down the flame with the extinguisher. I took my tool and I put a perimeter of dirt all the way around that hot stuff. I soaked that thing down with water, and then I stirred it up until that thing was just mud, until it was just completely mud. We've got a couple of different fire extinguishers that we would use for this job. For most of our fire setups, it's going to be this type ABC 5-pound extinguisher. These things have about 15 to 20 seconds of spray. And so if I'm not careful, if I don't use this thing properly, it's very easy to waste that. This is a 2-person job using one of these type ABC extinguishers, and we're going to use those on step 2, extinguish the flames. So I want to put myself about 8 feet away from that fire. If I get too close, 2 things are going to happen. A, that extinguisher doesn't have a chance to spread out to cover the whole fire. You can see that this person's standing a few feet away and allows that stream to spread out and cover the whole fire. The other thing is I'm really close. It's going to hit that fire with a lot more pressure and may kick those sparks in all directions, actually spreading the fire. So during this process, this is a 2-person job. We've got one person that's running the fire extinguisher, and we've got another person that's backing them up with a hand tool. They're looking out for each other, and if at any time in the process somebody does something that's not safe, their partner is going to help them out and put them on the right track. If I'm the one doing this and I'm standing right next to the fire, my partner's going to stop me and tell me, back up, back up, back up. Okay, right there, you're about 8 feet, go ahead. The next thing I want to think about is the P.A.S.S method. I pull the pin, I aim at the base of the fire, I squeeze the trigger, and I sweep that extinguisher back and forth. If I just spray that extinguisher right at the center of the fire like they're doing in this picture, it's still going to get oxygen from both sides. I want to spray it from side to side and cover that whole fire in that dry chemical to really smother that thing. One of the things that happens a lot in this situation is that it's very stressful, and I'm not thinking right, and I haven't ever used an extinguisher before, and it's easy to make a mistake. I don't pull the pin, I just try to squeeze and I try to squeeze. If I do that, if I do anything else, my partner is there to help me out. He's going to stop me right away and say, hold on, pull the pin. Or a lot of times, instead of spraying at the base of the fire, you got 10-foot tall flames and someone's trying to spray the top of the flames. You are never going to put the fire out that way. That's not what's on fire. What's burning is down below. So I want to aim at the base of the fire. Again, if I'm not doing this, I got a partner there to help me out. I'm going to squeeze the trigger. I'm going to sweep it back and forth. As soon as I knock that flame down, I'm gonna tell my partner with the tool to get in there and stir it up a little bit. And because there's still gonna be more heat in there, right? While he's stirring it up, I'm gonna stand right over that fire, and if it jumps back up, I'm gonna knock it down again. We're working together to stay safe. We're watching each other's back, and we're being each other's brother's keeper. The other thing I want to do, I almost forgot this, but it's very important. While I'm spraying, I pull that pin and I aim and I squeeze. When I start squeezing, I want to spray it at 3 seconds at a time. I want to spray 3 seconds, stop, count that out. 1, 2, 3, stop. Look at the fire, see what it's doing. 3 more, 4, 5, 6, stop. Look at the fire, what is it doing? 6, 7, 8. I'm losing count, but you understand what I'm talking about? And that way I know how much extinguisher I have left. As soon as that flame's knocked down, my partner's going to get in there, stir that stuff up, and I'm going to conserve as much of that as possible. If the fire was to jump back up for any reason, I'm going to knock it back down. What we have here is a water-filled extinguisher. We're trying to carry these on more of our mowers and equipment like that. These work a little different than the dry chemicals. You can actually put an ingredient in there, a fire suppressant that makes them a little bit more effective. But when they're just water alone, that's type A. So we have over here type ABC. I should have said this earlier, I almost forgot. Type A would be natural materials, paper or wood. Type B would be petroleum or gasoline products. And type C would be electrical fires. We can fight any kind of fire with these. That's why we keep them on our trucks. They're very good for those kind of fires. But if you have thick, dense vegetation, they don't always do that great of a job. That's where we want to use one of these kind of extinguishers right here. These type A, these are full with 2.5 gallons of water. These have almost a minute of spray. And when they're charged up, they'll actually shoot from a lot further than 8 feet away. They might shoot 40 or 50 feet away, but I want to get within 8 feet so I can really control that spray and really put it where I want to. Then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm working with the partner, the same exact process. I pull the pin, I aim at the base, I squeeze, and I spray at the base of the fire. Now, for these kind of extinguishers, I don't want to sweep them as much as I would as the ABC type of extinguishers. I'm going to spray it more or less right at the base of that fire with just a little sweeping action to make sure I'm covering all that hot area. All right, we got a couple of videos right here that demonstrate how are we using these different extinguishers.
Good afternoon, my name is Frank Archuleta. I'm the wildfire specialist for Wright Service Corps, and today I'm going to demonstrate how we use a 2.5 gallon water-filled extinguisher to put out a small fire. Working with me is Rod Moraga, our CEO of Anchor Point, who does a lot of training for us, and together we're going to demonstrate how 2 people work together to put out a small fire. So I put myself upwind of the fire. So as soon as I start the fire, as soon as possible, I'm going to pull the pin. I'm going to aim at the base of the fire, put myself about 8 feet away, and I'm going to go ahead and spray that thing down. As soon as I knock the flame down, Rod's going to get in there and stir that thing up. We'll put a little scratch line around that thing. It's a bare mineral soil. We'll make sure we're getting all the unburned stuff to the outside, keep all the hot stuff on the inside. By getting down to soil, we're making sure that that fire stays trapped in there. So now there's no flame, the fire can't run, and now the heat in there, we can spray it down with water really good and mix that thing up until there's no fire left. If at all possible, you want to dig to mineral soil. All the way down to bare dirt to make sure there's nothing in there that can burn. Spread it out. I'm staying here to keep guard. If for any reason that fire should start back up, I've got more water in the extinguisher, I'm going to go ahead and knock it down. What do you think, Rod? How's that look? Let's check it. Feels cold. But we got the water, we might as well do a little more. And we just stir and open it back up. There's heat in there. If we open it up, it will burn itself out. We've already called the fire department. We're just going to wait for them to show up here and make sure this fire that stays in the same condition it is right now. Thank you very much. That's how we use a 2.5 gallon.
Now, I know that wasn't much of a fire, but the fuel condition was, the fuel moisture was very high. So let's talk about one of these water-filled extinguishers. How do we fill them up? How do we charge them up? Fill them with water and charge them with air. If it'll play. All right, Frank Archuleta here again. Before we've spoken about how we use one of these 2.5 gallon water-filled extinguishers to put out a small fire. Now we're going to talk about filling them up with water and charging them up with air. So in order to fill it up with water, I take this cap off, I just unscrew it. I pull this whole nozzle out of here, and I can set that to the side. Inside, there's a small little cap in here that fits inside. I'm gonna fill it with water to the base of that. And when I fill it to the base of that, that water's gonna come gushing out. That's how I know when that thing is full. So let me go ahead and top this extinguisher off. All right, I can see the water come out the top of here. I can look in there and make sure that that's right to the top. The next thing I do is before I put this spraying mechanism back on, I want to look right here at the base of the cap. There's an O-ring that goes there. I want to make sure that O-ring is in place and that is not damaged. If it's not, this thing is not going to hold pressure and I need to replace that. So I'm going to go ahead and slip this down in there. I'm going to line up the nozzle with the nozzle catch right here, and I'm just going to hand tighten this thing. I don't want to over tighten this or use pliers or anything like that. Only hand tighten it completely, because when I fill this up with air, it's going to put a lot more pressure on there and it could become difficult to get off. So I hand tighten this all the way. All right, once it's hand tightened, I'm going to go ahead and hook up my compressor. On this side, we have the regulator. On the back side, I have a straighter valve. This is the same kind of valve that you would find on a bicycle tire or your car tire. So I'm going to go ahead and hook this up. Unfortunately, this compressor is not hooked up right here, but what I would do is turn the compressor on. I would keep an eye on the regulator right here, and I would keep an eye on the gauge on the compressor until that thing filled up to 100 PSI. As soon as it got to 100 PSI, I would go ahead and shut it off, disconnect the compressor, put the cap back on to protect that straighter valve, and now this thing is ready to go. At the end of the fire season, when it comes time to, when I want to put this away for the season, what I can do is, because that thing drafts from the bottom, right now there's some air on the top. If I turn this over, now that the air is at the bottom, I can just squeeze the trigger, and that'll let all the pressure out of this extinguisher, and I can go ahead and store it for the winter. So that is how we fill and charge up a 2.5 gallon water-filled fire extinguisher. Thank you very much. All right, one more video here. This is demonstrating the P.A.S.S method.
My name is Frank Archuleta. I'm the Wildfire Specialist for Wright Service Corps, and I'm here today to demonstrate the P.A.S.S method of fire extinguisher use. What I have here is a 5-pound ABC type extinguisher. This has about 15 to 20 seconds of spray, and for these kind of extinguishers, if I have a lot of vegetation, thick vegetation, they don't always do a good job. So it's always a two-man job. I want a partner there to help me do the right thing with the extinguisher and to keep an eye on me. We're looking out for one another. We're being our brother's keeper out there. So the P.A.S.S method is pull the pin, aim at the base of the fire, squeeze the trigger, and sweep back and forth. So the first thing I do, I'll put myself about 8 feet away from the fire. I pull the pin. I'm going to aim at the base of the fire. I'm gonna slowly get closer as I knock that fire down. In the real world, I would want a partner here. As soon as I knock that fire down, he'd get a tool and he'd break that open to let that heat get out. While he's doing that, I would stay right here in case that fire flared back up. I would just knock it down again. That's the P.A.S.S method for ABC type extinguishers. Thank you very much. So if you take a look at this, we sprayed this area with the ABC type extinguisher about 5 minutes ago. We let it sit there and there is still some heat. This is why it's always a two-man job. That's why I have somebody in there open that up with the tool. That's why I spray it down with water. That's why I put a perimeter around it. I can't just spray that down and leave it because these ABC type extinguishers do not do a good job of finishing those kind of fires off. So I want to break it open with the tool. I want to spray it with water. I want to put that perimeter all the way around it. And once it's wet, I want to really stir that thing up and kind of get in there and feel and make sure all that heat is truly gone. That's what it takes to fully put out a fire with these kind of extinguishers. All right, so for the extinguishers, for both kind of extinguishers, we've got to do inspections on those. The first one is an annual inspection. This is done by a professional. A quick Google search will let you know who does this kind of work in your community. A lot of times we can get them to come to our yards. At the end of the day, they can show up there. They can do all of our extinguishers at once. That way they're all on the same page. What they're checking for is the overall condition of this extinguisher. Is it damaged? Is it rusty? Is it dented? What's the condition of the hose? Is this thing in proper working order? Then they're going to make sure that thing is fully charged. If it's fully charged, the regulator, which is facing us, will be pointed right at 12 o'clock into that little green area. That's how we know it's fully charged. They'll put a pin in there to make sure that that thing does not trigger accidentally, and they'll put a safety tie around that pin to make sure that that pin does not fall out. At the end of it, they're going to put on a tag like this one you can see right here. It says Clark Fire Protection. That shows the date of the inspection and that the inspection was done. On the back side of that, there's going to be a space for the monthly inspection. It's going to have spaces for January through December. So that annual inspection is done by a professional. This monthly inspection is done by a Wright Tree Service employee. On the first of every month, we've got to do that same inspection. Is this thing in good working order? Is it damaged? Is the hose okay? Is it fully charged? Does it have that inspection tag still on there from the annual inspection? Does it have the pin to keep it from discharging? And does it have that safety tie to prevent that pin from falling out? If any of that stuff is missing, you need to notify your general foreman. It's very easy to get more on there, but if for some reason that pin is missing or that safety tie, we can't replace them with, baling wire or duct tape or anything like that. In order to be properly set up, that way we can use them properly when we need them and get them to function very quickly. They have to be set up just like that. The last thing we're going to talk about is that DOT inspection. This is part of our 360 walk around. When you get a new vehicle, especially if it's not your normal vehicle, we need to check that vehicle out, make sure it has everything it needs, including a fire extinguisher, making sure it's accessible, that it's not buried by a bunch of old sweaters and McDonald's wrappers and other garbage, and that everybody on the truck knows where it is. We know that it's charged, we know it's been inspected, we know it's accessible, everybody knows where it is. When it comes time to use this thing, it is ready to go. So let's talk about the 5-step suppression method. Call the fire department ASAP. Extinguish the flames. We talked about that. It's a 2-person job. I'm using that extinguisher. I'm starting from 8 feet away. I'm counting off while I'm spraying to make sure I don't run out of a extinguisher. And I'm putting myself upwind. I'm following that P.A.S.S method. Next thing I'm going to do, once I've knocked down that flame, I'm going to take one of my hand tools and I'm going to form a perimeter all the way down to bare mineral soil. That way that heat that's trapped in there can't creep out of there. I've removed all the fuels from it. It's trapped there. Once I've done that, I'm going to spray that area with water from my backpack pump. I'm going to spray that thing down as well as I can until it is just soaked. Then I'm going to take a tool like a shovel and I'm going to mix that thing up. I can throw in some more dirt. I can stir that up and just keep turning it over and mixing it until there's no heat there. And I can kind of use the back of my hand to hold it over that fire just to cautiously make sure there's no heat left. If there is heat, I'm going to continue to spray with water and I'm going to continue to mix. Then I'm going to wait on the job site until the fire department shows up. Remember, once the fire department shows up, they assume 100% of the responsibility. Our hands are clean. We wait for them, we tell them what happened, we explained, and then we can go, and that is their baby. But if I was to leave that there,
and that thing started back up, that could come back on me. That is not legally, that fire is not legally out until the fire department says it is. So 5-pound ABC type extinguisher, stand 8 feet away. You got 15 to 20 seconds of spray time. Make sure you're counting that out and make sure you do a better job of counting than I just did. Pull the pin. A lot of times people will forget that, right? I've got a partner there helping me out. Aim at the base of the fire. I'm not spraying the flame. I'm spraying the base of the fire. Again, if I'm not doing it right, I got a partner there to help me out. Squeeze the trigger and sweep back and forth. The inspections that we do, we've got the annual and the monthly inspection. We want to make sure that thing is fully charged. We want to make sure it has a pin, a safety tie, and that it's in good condition. The annual is done by a professional company, and the monthly is done by a Wright Tree Service employee on the 1st of every month. That's how we know these extinguishers are in good shape and ready to use. We want to, I guess that was a question. Well, I blew that one. So I'm going to go with A since I just said that's what it was. It's fully charged, it has the pin, it has the safety tie, and it's in good condition. I let the cat out of the bag. Annual done by a professional, monthly done by a Wright Tree employee. So if a fire is suppressed by Wright Tree employees, we've talked about this, we call the fire department, we let them know the status. If we've gone through that whole step, we've sprayed it down with water, we've done all that stuff, and we feel that this fire is in good condition, we want to make sure and tell the fire department there. It's not a 911 call. They don't need to come rushing out, but we do want them to come to the site. Once they show up, like I said, it's their responsibility. They'll continue to monitor that. They'll come back a couple times throughout the week to make sure everything is good and make sure that fire hasn't changed status. So we call them, we let them know what's going on, we wait for them to show up, we call our Wright Tree supervisor as soon as possible. If a fire escapes control or we see a fire that we did not start, then what we want to do is let everybody know what's going on. We want to get out of there. We want to follow our escape routes, get to a safety zone, someplace that is very safe for all of us, and then we're going to call 911, let them know what we saw, call your Wright Tree supervisor, and let them know what occurred. So fire response, the chances are we're not going to see any press hanging around our job sites. But if anybody should ask any questions, just let them know to call the corporate office and they can handle any questions that they have. We don't want to not talk with people. We just want to make sure that they get the right response. We want to preserve the site. We don't want to move anything. We don't want to disturb anything. In case there needs to be an investigation, they can see that we left stuff as it is, and we want to get a statement from all the people that were on the job site. As much information as they can give about that fire. What were we doing? What happened? What kind of setup had we done? What kind of steps did we take to try to put that fire out? Get as clear a statement as you can from everybody on the job site. So a quick review here of our whole training today. It starts off with awareness. I need to know what is the weather forecast today. What is the fire danger level for the day? I need to make sure everybody on my job site knows that. Make sure everybody's looking around as well. Make sure we're keeping our eyes open. If we see hazards, if we see problems, we're going to share that with everybody. We're going to keep that awareness level very high. That goes a long ways to keeping us safe. When the fire danger is higher or greater, we're going to complete a fire briefing. That's going to give us that job site fire danger level. That's going to tell us how dangerous this job site is and what kind of steps do we need to do to manage that. We're also going to set up our fire tools. That's going to be 40 feet, within 40 feet of the job site for the people in Wright Tree Service, and for people working for Wright Tree Service of the West, that's going to be within 25 feet of your job site. But remember this, the closer the better. If a fire breaks out, I don't want to have to run any distance to get those tools. I wanted to have them as absolutely close as I can, because when I need them right now. When I'm parking, I want to really think about, can I park on a hardened surface, on pavement, on cement, on hard ground? If I can't do that, then I want to think about that putting a fire blanket down beneath my vehicle to make sure that I'm not starting any fires. So that is our training for today. If you would please fill out a TAR, and you only need to fill out one, but send it to training@wrighttree.com and send it to me so I can document your training, the same TAR. My email address is right there, farchuleta@wrighttree.com. There's the information you need. The course code is 557, the training code is 420, and the title of this course has been Wildfire Safety and Prevention Webinar, in case you can't read my bad writing. My employee number is 36992. If you have any questions or concerns, please give me a call. Part of my job is to help people out and make sure that we're answering these questions. So there's my number right there. I'd be more than happy to talk to you. that is our training for today. I thank you very much and have a nice day. Stay safe.